The sound of the lock turning lightly in my hand, a sharp click echoing, and the door swung open. In that moment, I knew my life had taken a different path. Not dazzling, not glorious, but mine alone. I stood dazed at the threshold, my eyes not yet accustomed to the afternoon light streaming through the pristine window, the faint smell of fresh paint lingering. My chest tightened, not out of fear, but from an emotion I couldn't quite name, a trembling sense of freedom. I am Emily Carter, 33 years old, born and raised in Portland, Oregon. The eldest daughter in a family that wasn't wealthy, but had an abundance of belief that girls should sacrifice. I lived up to that for over a decade, worked 2 jobs at once, skipped every vacation, didn't buy a new pair of shoes for 3 years. And tonight I opened the door to the first house in my name. No one could take it from me. Not my mother, not my brother, no one. I chose this house because it was far enough from downtown to be quiet, but still close to work. 2 bedrooms, a small basement, a backyard big enough for a few flower beds. Every brick, every tile paid for with overtime hours and instant noodle dinners. My mother, Veronica, wasn't thrilled about the idea. She thought a single woman buying a house was a waste. "Wait until you're married," she'd said. My brother Ryan thought I was showing off. Still, I invited them to the first dinner in my new home. Partly out of courtesy, partly, though, I didn't want to admit it because I still hoped they'd be proud of me, even just a little. They arrived 20 minutes late. I'd already set the table, prepared my mother's favorite roasted chicken and a salad Madison once said she liked. When I opened the door, my mother walked in first, followed by Ryan and Madison. She glanced around the living room, then plopped onto the couch as if it were her house. "It's smaller than I expected," Madison said, her voice soft but her eyes scanning like she was checking for dust. She picked up a photo frame I'd just placed on the shelf, then set it down. "But cute," she added as if to soften the blow. Ryan stood by the window nodding. "Yeah, probably just right for someone living alone. You don't need a big place." I forced a smile. "Want to see the kitchen? I fixed up the cabinets." "Cabinets don't matter as long as you've got Mom's casserole," my mother said, clapping her hands on her thighs. I heard the sound of her skin against the fabric of my new couch. I led them to the kitchen. The smell of food filled the air, cozy, like I'd always dreamed. I turned my back to the sink, pulling off the oven mitts. "It's a pity," my mother said suddenly, "this money could have gone toward Ryan's wedding." "Wouldn't that have been better?" I froze. The kitchen went silent. Ryan suddenly focused on his phone. Madison smiled as if my mother had said something charming. "Excuse me," I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "You know how expensive weddings are these days. We were planning to help Ryan with the venue, but now—" My mother let out a deliberate sigh. "It's just not right to spend it all on a house when your brother needs it more." I stared at her. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I'd misheard. This was my mother, the woman I'd skipped meals to send money to for car repairs, saying I was selfish. "I saved for 10 years, I said, quietly but firmly. 10 years of standing on my own, not owing anyone a dime. This is my achievement." "And now you have it," my mother replied as if I'd been handed a prize. "Ryan only gets married once. A house. You can buy one any time." Madison looked up. "We're looking at a venue on Mount Hood. Gorgeous, but a bit over budget." "How much is a bit?" I asked, already regretting it. "Only about 15,000, Madison said, her eyes sparkling, as if she were talking about a dream wedding dress. "Nothing compared to the price of this house, Emily." I turned to Ryan. "What do you think?" He shrugged. "If you could help, that'd be great. But no pressure." No pressure. I'd just signed a mortgage. My bank account had exactly $400 left. And yet, they sat here in the house I'd built from scratch talking about how I should use it to fund a wedding. "You could refinance the house," my mother suggested. "It's a family asset. It should serve the family." I turned away, picking up the knife to carve the perfectly roasted chicken. My hands trembled slightly. The smell of food suddenly felt suffocating, but I still served dinner, setting out plates as if nothing had happened. Dinner passed in oppressive silence. Madison took pictures of the food. Ryan ate, eyes glued to his phone. My mother complained that my napkin folds weren't refined enough. No one asked how I felt. No one praised me for buying a house. No one. "Thanks for the meal," Ryan said as they left, sounding rehearsed. "Madison's a great cook. After the wedding, you should come to our place for dinner." "Yeah, but first we need a place to invite you to," Madison said with a pointed laugh. After they left, I stood in the kitchen. The sink was full of dishes. The warm afternoon air was gone, replaced by something cold, as if the house itself felt insulted. I washed each plate, wiped each spoon, as if scrubbing away the sting of being dismissed. I'd dreamed of this moment so many times, my family praising me, hugging me, saying they were proud. Instead, they saw my house and thought about what they could take from me. I dried the last plate and put it in the cupboard. Mine. My cupboard. In my kitchen. In the house, no one could take from me unless I let them. I stepped into the backyard, standing under Portland's night sky, silent. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't over. Not just a disappointing dinner. This was the start of something bigger. A crack was forming not in the house, but in me, and it was about to spread. 3 days after that dinner, I woke just after 5 a.m, to a strange sound, a steady, slow drip, persistent like a ticking clock waiting to explode. I thought it was rain, but as I stepped into the kitchen and listened closely, I knew something was wrong. The sound was coming from the basement. I flipped on the hallway light and opened the basement door. A musty, sharp smell hit me, something unfamiliar and harsh. Cold air rushed up from the stairs. When I reached the bottom step, water lapped at my ankles. The ceiling light reflected my silhouette in the rippling water. Storage bins, boxes of books, pieces of wood, all floating like a miniature shipwreck. The basement was completely flooded. I don't remember calling the plumber, only that I was shaking through the call, trying to keep my voice from breaking. Everything I'd built with a decade of savings now soaked and ruined. The plumber arrived earlier than expected. He was about 50, stocky, wearing safety glasses and carrying an industrial flashlight. He introduced himself as Dave. Without much talk, he rolled up his sleeves and waded into the basement with his tall boots, the flashlight beam following his steps. "I need to shut off the main water line first," he said curtly. Professional, but not cold. I nodded, standing on the steps, trying to stay calm, though my heart felt like it was being squeezed. A few minutes later, he looked up. Good news and bad news. I swallowed hard. Start with the good. It's not the main pipe. You don't need to replace the whole system. I exhaled, half relieved. And the bad. This pipe was smashed, he said, his tone matter-of-fact. Not a natural leak. I straightened. What do you mean? He crouched, shining his light on a copper pipe dripping steadily. See these dents. 3 different spots. Hammer marks or something heavy. Aligned. Not natural. Someone did this on purpose. A chill ran down my spine. I stepped down 2 more steps, looking closely at the pipe. The cracks were deliberate. No accident. No coincidence. You're sure? I asked, my voice hoarse. 20 years in this job. Natural breaks are random. This one, someone helped it break. I gripped the wall to keep from collapsing. After he left to prepare a quote, I stood in the basement, cold water up to my ankles, watching my life float in pieces. Family photos blurred and soaked. Important documents ink running. The wooden table I'd salvaged from a flea market and repainted warped. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just felt empty. But moments later, that emptiness turned into something else. Instinct, maybe. I ran upstairs, grabbed my phone, and opened the app for the security system I'd installed when I moved in. Partly because I lived alone, partly because of an unnamed unease. The basement had a small camera pointed directly at the water pipe. I rewound the footage to 2 days earlier. At first, nothing. Dust, dim light, silence. But at 11:47 a.m. that day, the basement door opened. Ryan walked in. My heart clenched. I watched him glance around the room as if checking for witnesses. Then he pulled out his phone, pressed it to his ear. His lips moved. I couldn't hear the words, but he nodded, then walked straight to the pipe, as if he knew exactly where to go. Then he pulled a hammer from his jacket. A small one with a rubber grip. He tapped the pipe, inspected it, then raised the hammer. 3 strikes, precise, deliberate. Water began to leak. Ryan stepped back, glanced at his work, then pressed the phone to his ear again. I saw his lips, clearly. It's done. I paused the video. My hand holding the phone was ice cold. My legs felt numb. My brother. Ryan. The boy who'd shared a bed with me as kids, whom I'd carried when he had a fever, whom I'd wired money to for temporary help, had smashed my basement. And he'd done it on our mother's orders. I didn't need to hear the audio. I knew. I knew exactly. I sank into a kitchen chair, my heart pounding. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate sabotage. Calculated betrayal. Then I remembered something else. I hadn't told anyone about the flooded basement. Not a text. Not a call. I hadn't even figured out how to talk about it. Yet, an hour earlier, I'd gotten a text from Ryan. Heard about your basement. That sucks. Let me know if you need anything. I hadn't told anyone. How did he know? They knew. They knew because they did it. And now they were waiting for me to crumble to give them an excuse to swoop in. You should consider selling the house to Ryan, my mother had said that night over the dinner I'd cooked sitting on the couch I'd bought. Families share. That's how we stay together. Stay together, or keep me chained to the role of the eternal martyr. I looked around my kitchen. Every item I'd bought was the result of sacrifice, a canceled vacation, a pair of shoes I didn't buy, a meal I skipped. And they saw it as a stepping stone for their own wants. No, not this time. I steadied myself, reopened the video, and slowed it frame by frame, taking screenshots of every second. Then I saved the original to 3 devices, uploaded 1 copy to the cloud, and backed it up on a USB. For the first time in years, I saw clearly. I knew what I had to do. I stepped outside, breathing in Portland's damp, cold air. It started to rain. The first drops of the season pattered on the eaves, blending with the sound of water inside me. Not every flood comes from the sky. Some come from the people you once called family, but I wouldn't let them sweep me away again. I went back inside, grabbed my phone, and dialed the first person I thought of. Aunt Grace, I need to see you. I think I need the truth. When I knocked on Aunt Grace's familiar turquoise door, I wasn't sure exactly what I was seeking. Advice, confirmation, or just an adult truly mature and kind to make me feel I wasn't crazy. But when the door opened and I saw her calm, clear eyes as if she'd known I'd come, I knew I was in the right place. You look like you just walked out of a storm, she said, pulling me inside without question. You're not wrong, I replied, shrugging off my rain-soaked coat and sinking into her worn, floral-upholstered armchair. The familiar smell of fresh bread and lavender oil filled the air. Aunt Grace's house always felt oddly safe, like a bunker against the world's deceit. She brought out 2 steaming cups of tea. No questions, waiting for me to start. I told her everything. From the disastrous dinner to the flooded basement, from the deliberate cracks to the video showing Ryan, my brother, following my mother's instructions to sabotage my home. I mentioned the text Ryan sent before I'd told anyone, and the shattering realization it was all planned. I spilled it all. No detail spared. Aunt Grace didn't interrupt. Didn't sigh. Just sipped her tea and nodded. Her eyes, bright, deep, and pained, looked at me not as a child needing protection, but as a woman who'd endured enough to understand. When you left your mother's house and stood on your own, she said. After I fell silent, I thought, finally she's stepped out of Veronica's shadow. But I didn't expect your mother to keep trying to hold you, not with love, but with control. I looked up. Aunt Grace had never called my mother by her first name. Never. You knew I asked. She let out a long breath. More than you think. Veronica once borrowed $20,000 from me for Ryan's future, specifically his college tuition. She cried, begged, said, "Family helps family." I gave her the money. Ryan never knew. She didn't tell him. My heartbeat slowed. Not from surprise, but because something in me was confirmed. And you stayed silent. I thought it was family business. Thought speaking up would hurt you. But now? She placed her hand on mine, squeezing gently. Now it's not family business anymore. This is a war for justice, Emily. I swallowed hard. War sounded too grand. But I understood. This wasn't just a personal conflict. This was a crime, organized betrayal, and I was the victim. "What will you do?" she asked, her voice gentle but not pressing. I didn't answer right away. I pulled out my phone, opened the video of Ryan smashing the pipe. Aunt Grace watched without blinking. When the final words, "It's done," played, she set the phone down like someone who'd just heard a verdict. "I've saved copies in 3 places," I said. "Cloud external drive and a USB hidden away." She nodded. Smart. After that talk, I went home and started gathering everything. The video screenshots of texts, call logs, camera timestamps showing when Ryan entered and left the basement. I called Ethan, my close colleague at work. He'd once mentioned a friend who was a lawyer specializing in family law and property damage. "Is it that serious?" Ethan asked over the phone, his voice tinged with worry. "Serious enough that if I don't act, people will keep thinking I'm a tree they can chop down whenever they want." Ethan didn't press further. An hour later, he sent me the number of Marcus's lawyer friend and arranged a meeting for the next day. Marcus's law office was in a glass building in downtown Portland. He was younger than I expected, early 40s, dark hair, neat shirt, silk tie, sharp brown eyes. "I've heard the basics from Ethan," Marcus said, pulling out a chair for me. "But I want to hear it from you." I laid out the entire case, showing him the video, The evidence, even the audio clip with my mother's clear voice. When I finished, Marcus leaned back, nodding as if piecing together the final parts of a puzzle. "You've got a solid case for intentional property damage," he said. "If the dialogue in the video holds up, there could be charges of conspiracy, or even abetment. And civilly. You could sue for property damage, emotional distress, repair costs, and if we prove intent, possibly punitive damages." I nodded. Not because I wanted money, because I wanted them to face consequences. "But before you sue," Marcus said, "understand. There are things you can do within the law, and things you might want to do outside it. I see in you more than just wanting to fix a pipe." I met his gaze. "Honest. Exactly. I want them to see. I want the whole family to see. That I'm not the unstable eccentric my mother's been spreading. I want the truth to shine." Marcus smiled. "Then let's start with a rational plan." That evening I sent invitations to the entire family. Another dinner at my new house, round 2. This time not to seek praise or approval. This time to unveil the truth. I called Aunt Grace again. "Can you come early?" I asked. "I need someone near the projector." She laughed. "I'll bring wine. And a mirror, so someone in your family can finally see themselves." I hung up and opened my laptop. I started building a slideshow. The first part showed the house when I got it run down dusty. Then each step of my renovations, painting walls, laying tiles, planting flowers. Things I did with my own hands. Light, cheerful background music. Then I inserted the video, unedited, no narration, followed by screenshots of texts. An anonymous email to the city traced to Ryan's home IP. A message from Madison to a friend bragging that the house would soon be hers because Emily can't hold on to it. I ended with a simple slide. "Family isn't where you're torn down. Family is where you're built up." I sat still staring at the screen. No tears, no trembling, but a fire had sparked. Not a fire of hatred, a fire of justice. And I knew on that dinner night I'd burn away every lie that had cloaked me like toxic fog. There's a particular silence before a storm. Not peaceful, but charged, waiting to erupt. That evening my house carried that silence. I'd cleaned since the afternoon, wiping every surface, adjusting every napkin. The kitchen smelled of roasted meat and fresh bread. Candlelight flickered on the dining table, and soft living room lights reflected off the wall where a small projector was set up. No one knew what was coming, except me. They arrived one by one in an order that made me smile. Olivia, my cautious cousin, came first with a bottle of wine. Uncle Robert followed, carrying a box of desserts from his favorite bakery. Then Madison in a white dress, slightly too glamorous for a family dinner. Ryan trailed her, looking tense but forcing a smile. My mother arrived last, empty-handed as always. "It looks better than last time," she said as she walked in, her eyes scanning like she was appraising a model home. I just nodded. "Thanks for coming." Aunt Grace arrived right after, her eyes quickly sweeping the room before landing on me. We didn't need words. She knew. Dinner went suspiciously smoothly. Everyone made light conversation, laughed on cue, sipped wine moderately. My mother complimented the roasted potatoes a first. Ryan talked about work with fake enthusiasm. Madison showed off her engagement ring for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. I just listened, observed, keeping my face calm as if nothing existed beyond the plate in my hands. When dessert was served, I stood raising my glass. "I want to thank you all for coming. Truly." I looked at each of them. Last time we met here, it wasn't ideal. So I wanted a do-over. And this time I've prepared something special. Ryan glanced at me, frowning slightly. Madison tilted her head, smiling politely. My mother set her glass down, her eyes flickering with suspicion. "Just a little slideshow?" I continued. "Some pictures of the house's journey. I think you'll like it." I walked to the projector, turned it on, and drew the curtains. The room darkened, lit only by the screen on the wall. The first slide showed me standing in front of the house, when I bought it, dilapidated broken door peeling paint. Everyone gasped. Rough, Olivia whispered. "Can't believe you turned it into this." I didn't respond. Next came short clips me painting walls, laying tiles, installing lights. Gentle, upbeat music played. Everyone relaxed. I heard Madison mutter, "Pretty impressive, actually." Then I clicked next. The image changed. No more warm colors, no music. Just a black and white recording, time-stamped clearly 11:47 a.m. Wednesday, last week. The basement door opened. Ryan stepped into frame. The room froze. I said nothing. No one said anything. Ryan stared at the screen, his face paling. Everyone watched him walk down the basement stairs, make a phone call, then pull a hammer from his jacket. 3 strikes, precise. Water began to leak. His voice small but clear. "It's done." The screen paused. I turned to face the stunned room. "What the hell?" Madison whispered. I clicked to the next slide. A screenshot of her text to a friend. "She won't last. The house will be ours soon." Then an anonymous email to the city accusing me of violating repair codes, claiming I was financially unfit, urging a forced inspection. Traced to Ryan's apartment IP. Finally, a screenshot of my mother's chat in her badminton group. "She's not stable. Thinks buying a house makes her in charge. We'll see." Madison jumped up. "This isn't right. You faked it. You edited it." I turned to her. "Check your account. If it's not yours, I'll publicly apologize." She froze, then backed toward the door. Ryan stood, his voice shaking. "You spied on me." "I protected my home." I said, my eyes locked on his. My mother finally spoke, her voice sharp as a blade. "This is outrageous, Emily. You're using this evening to smear your mother and brother." "No," I said slowly. "I'm using this evening to shine a light on the truth. You called me unstable, but I'm clear-headed enough to save every piece of evidence. Family doesn't destroy each other's homes and call it love." All eyes turned to Veronica. Her face flushed, then paled, then she let out a hollow laugh. "Well done, Emily. Exposing your family at a dinner. You think that's winning." "Tonight isn't about winning or losing," I replied. "It's about no longer staying silent." Ryan sank into his chair, head bowed. Madison left without a word. Uncle Robert stood, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're not wrong, kid. You did what you had to." Olivia hugged me. "I always believed in you, Emily. I just didn't think they'd go that far." My mother said nothing. She just stood there as if searching for an exit that didn't exist. Aunt Grace stepped out of the shadows in the corner where she'd sat quietly since the start. "Veronica," she said, her voice low and steady. "I've stayed silent for years, but no more. You've used family like a pair of handcuffs. And Emily just broke the lock. I don't remember when everyone left, only that I stood there long after the room emptied. The projector's light still flickered, showing the final unplayed slides. The last slide had one line. Family isn't where you're torn down. Family is where you're built up." I turned off the projector, quietly cleared the dishes. No tears, no anger. Just one thing clear in me. I got an email at 5:12 a.m., an odd hour for an apology, or for starting something new. In my inbox, one name stood out familiar down to its punctuation, Ryan Carter. The subject line was just 2 words, "I'm sorry." I hesitated for a few seconds before opening it. My heart was empty, or maybe I'd learned not to expect anything from those who'd hurt me. But then I read, "Emily, I know even this apology is too late and not enough, but I can't stay silent anymore. That dinner when I saw the video you played, I realized there was nowhere left to hide. I was wrong. I smashed the pipe. I sent the anonymous email. I listened to Mom, not because you deserved it, but because I was jealous. Jealous of your independence, of how you live without needing anyone. Jealous when I saw you buy a house, take control of your life, something I've never had the courage to do. I was a coward, Emily. A coward who needed someone else to tell me how to ruin you. A coward who didn't own up until it all came crashing down. But if there's even a sliver of a chance, I want to make it right. I'll sell my car, take extra shifts. I've already started night work at the warehouse. I'll pay for the repairs on any terms you set. I'm sorry, Emily, truly. Below is a recording. I hope you'll listen if you can." I sat motionless for a long time, staring at the audio link. Not quite fear. Just unsure if I wanted to hear words from someone who'd shattered my trust. But then I pressed play. Ryan's voice came through choked, imperfect but sincere. "Emily, this is the first time I'm talking to you without someone pulling the strings. No Mom, no Madison, just me. I remember when you taught me to ride a bike. I fell and you didn't laugh. You ran beside me holding the handlebars until I balanced. I used to think you were strong because you were my big sister. Now I see you're strong because no one held your hand and you still kept going. That night you invited us to dinner, I thought, she's just showing off. But watching you fuss over napkins, check the oven, set the table with trembling hands, I knew I was wrong. I broke the pipe, but what I really broke was something sacred trust. I'm sorry, from the bottom of my heart, and I'm not running anymore." I stopped the recording, setting the phone face down on the table. My heart ached in a different way, Not anger, but a mix of loss and something found. A week later, Aunt Grace hosted a family meeting at her house, the first since the truth dinner. I arrived early helping her set the table, but this time I wasn't trembling or seeking approval. I just wanted closure, real closure. Ryan arrived on time alone without Mom or Madison. He wore an old, unironed shirt, his face pale hair slightly messy. When he saw me, he didn't approach, but stood at the door waiting for my nod. I didn't nod, but I didn't turn away either. The meeting was heavy. No one spoke first. Then Ryan stood. No notes, no speech. Just him, raw like his mistakes. I know no one wants to hear me, but I need to say this. The room fell silent. Ryan stepped forward slowly like a man walking to a confession. I sabotaged Emily's house. There's proof, and you all know it. I'm not making excuses. I did it out of jealousy cowardice because I couldn't admit she's better than me. He turned to me. You could press charges. I deserve it. But if you'll let me, I want to face the consequences with actions. I've sold my car. I'm working night shifts. I'll pay every dime. And if you need, I'll work for free clean paint, anything. Then, unexpectedly, he knelt. Not dramatic. Not theatrical. Just a brother who didn't know how to stand before the sister he'd betrayed. Everyone froze. My mother, Veronica, stood up. Stop this act, Ryan. You're my son. You don't need to kneel before her. I'm kneeling because I was wrong. Ryan interrupted the first time he'd ever cut her off. I ruined everything. And this time, I'm not letting you control me. Veronica turned to me, her voice sharp. What are you doing? Emily turning the family against me. Have you ever thought about my feelings? I stood facing the woman who'd placed expectations on me since I was a child, then crushed my trust with her blind favoritism. I thought about your feelings every day. When you were sick, when you needed money, when you wanted to help Ryan. I never said no, but you never thought I had feelings. You only saw me as an ATM, as the one who carries the burden. I took a deep breath. I'm not pressing criminal charges against Ryan. I told the lawyer I'll stick to a civil suit, to give him a chance to make it right. But I need accountability, not promises. I turned to Ryan. 1 payment a month, consistent. You keep your word, I keep mine. Ryan nodded hard, still kneeling, tears falling onto the rug. My mother left first. No apology, no empathy in her eyes, but she no longer held any strings to my heart. Ryan stood, approached me, and looked me in the eyes like a man for the first time. Thank you, he said, for not kicking me down further, even though you could. I didn't reply, just placed a hand on his shoulder lightly enough for him to know I see you. And I'll watch not to be fooled again, but not turning away either. When everyone left, I sat alone in Aunt Grace's living room. It was raining lightly outside. In my heart, the storm was gone. I picked up my phone, opened my to-do list. Crossed off file criminal charges, then added a new item, write my own rules. I was no longer Emily, the enduring eldest. I was Emily, the woman who knows forgiveness isn't forgetting, but choosing not to let the past steer her life. I sipped cold tea and smiled, because after the storm, the sky was clearing. I got a call from the hospital on a Tuesday morning in early November. As I was brewing coffee in the kitchen, I'd repainted from cold ash gray to warm cream. The nurse said my mother, Veronica Carter, had been admitted to the ER for exhaustion from prolonged stress. Not life-threatening, but she needed monitoring for a few days. I listened without shock. No satisfaction either, just a quiet calm, like I'd known this was coming, just not when. I looked at the steaming coffee, then out the window. The maple leaves had turned golden, a cool autumn breeze brushing the glass. Something in me urged I need to go, not to comfort, but to end something for real this time. When I reached the hospital, my mother's room was silent. She lay on her side, dim light casting shadows on her visibly thinner face. She turned when she heard the door, her eyes surprised. Not because I was there, but because I was alone. Your sister didn't come, she asked, her voice hoarse from fatigue in the past. I never had a sister, I replied, pulling up a chair. Just Ryan. And he's cleaning up his own life now. She pursed her lips. A faint cough passed. I sat still, not reaching for water, not looking away. I'd learned to stay with the truth, even when it wasn't easy. I know you didn't have to come, she said. So, thank you. I nodded, not rushing to respond. For the first time, I saw my mother not as the manipulative, angry, controlling woman. She was an old woman in a hospital bed alone. A woman who'd spent her life controlling others and lost control of herself. I was jealous of you, Emily, she said, suddenly, staring at the ceiling. Not for the house money or job, but because you didn't need me. I looked at her, the hospital's yellow light making her face a different version. Wrinkled, honest, tired. No one wants to live without needing their mother, I said. But when you made me afraid every time I called home, made me think I was only worth something when I sacrificed, I had to learn to live without you. She closed her eyes, turning toward the wall. I don't resent you anymore, I said slowly. But I don't need you to save me either. I've saved myself. I stood, placing a hand on her shoulder, not like a child seeking warmth, but an adult touching her past, then letting go. Goodbye, Mom. When you're better, I hope you'll learn to love without owning. Then I walked out. 6 months after that truth dinner, my life didn't turn magical. I still woke early, worked hard, sometimes felt lonely. But one thing had changed profoundly. I no longer lived in fear or regret. I wrote, not just to record what happened, but to understand who I am. My blog, Build It Anyway, started with a short post about buying my first house despite family opposition. I wrote about learning to fix pipes, weld sinks, and mend myself. Within 3 months, hundreds of women followed. Some were single mothers. Some were dismissed by their own families. We formed a small group meeting monthly at a cafe by the Willamette River. We didn't talk about hatred. We talked about Brickswood finances, about standing up without waiting for a hand. That Thanksgiving, I hosted a dinner at the house once deemed too small, too ugly, too selfish to keep. Ryan arrived early, bringing homemade bread and a jug of cider. No Madison. She'd left his life 2 months after he stopped listening to Mom. For the first time, I see a house as a place to grow, Ryan said at the door, his voice thick. Not to hide. I gave him a light, sufficient hug. Aunt Grace came bringing roasted turkey and a stack of books for my women's group. Ethan, now a true friend, helped with dessert, and as usual teased that I should open a restaurant. When everyone was seated, I stood raising my glass. Tonight, I said, we're not celebrating a victory. We're celebrating a beginning. For those told they're too much, too independent, too selfish, and still live. Still build their own homes. Their eyes met mine, not as a victor, but a guide. I once thought forgiveness meant erasing. Now I know forgiveness is building a life the people who hurt you can't destroy. Forgiveness is when you don't need their pain to feel peace. I walked around the table looking at each face some I'd resented, distanced, hurt, and been saved by. They sat here. No one perfect, but all trying to be kinder than yesterday. I picked up my plate, looking at the warm kitchen where I'd once collapsed, once ached, watching water flood my basement, once thought I'd never stand again, and then I smiled. I hadn't just stood. I'd rebuilt brick by brick, word by word, choice by choice. I'm the woman who doesn't need rescuing. I rescued myself. Looking back on my journey, I no longer see the losses, hurts, or betrayals as mere pain. I see profound lessons in forgiveness growth, and how a woman can rise from the very place she once fell. This story isn't just mine. It's the voice of many who've been wounded in their own homes, dismissed simply for choosing to live differently. I write this not to cast blame, but to prove you don't need anyone's validation to be worthy. As long as you keep building your life, your trust yourself, no one can tear that down. If you see yourself in this story, leave a comment, share your thoughts, or just say hello. And if you want to join me in writing the next chapters about independence, healing, and loving, rightly follow the channel. Because here you don't have to be perfect to be heard.